As you know, today is July 4th, Independence Day. This is the day on which our founders, almost 250 years ago, made a pledge to free the people from the tyranny of an oppressive monarchy. Today, we as Americans are supposed to come together to celebrate our freedoms, to celebrate the fact that over that almost 2.5 centuries, we have expanded those freedoms to include people our founders did not think about, to celebrate the birth of our democracy, to celebrate the expansion of that democracy and the founding principles of this country. This is something I've been thinking about, though. What is there to celebrate today on July 4th, 2025, when the very reasons we fought to free ourselves from that tyranny are being challenged by the very people we have empowered? How do we celebrate democracy when the people in power are doing everything in their power to dismantle it? How do we celebrate our freedoms when Donald Trump and his enablers and his fellow travelers in the fascist Republican Party want to make sure that people they don't like, people they disagree with, people who do not look like them or believe like them, no longer have any freedoms? I don't know the answer to that question. So Donald Trump is out there waving the American flag, a flag he has desecrated more times than I can count. Meanwhile, what he's actually doing or allowing to be done in his name is exactly what our founders desperately were trying to free us from. He is trying to become a tyrant. He is desperate to become an authoritarian. And quite frankly, there are far too many people who were helping him do those things. So, tyranny, repression, persecution, and the dismantling of the very system that up until 6 months ago was put in place in order to make sure that no one man ever had the kind of unlimited, unchecked power to wreak havoc upon the peoples of a nation. So I want to take us back to July 4th, 1776. The Declaration of Independence wasn't simply the colonies stating their independence from the king and the English monarchy. It was a list of grievances. It was a list of reasons why declaring our independence had become necessary. If you read the Declaration of Independence now, if you pay attention to the things that are on that list, this does not sound like something that happened over 2 centuries ago. It sounds exactly like what we're dealing with now, although I would argue in some very real respects, what we're dealing with now is worse, because it suggests we have not learned the lessons that the founders took in. It suggests that untold millions of people who sacrificed their lives, and in some cases their livelihoods, and in some cases had those things stolen from them, did so in vain. Quote, he, and this is referring to King George III, has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good, unquote. In his first 6 months back in power, Donald has violated court orders, he's defied congressional statutes, he has used executive power to punish his enemies, and he has promised worse and more. From immigration rulings to attacks on federal judges, he's proven again and again that he thinks laws are for other people, and sadly, the corrupt, illegitimate supermajority of the Supreme Court has given him every reason to believe that that is the case, as it applies to him. Quote, he has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, unquote. Donald's big abominable bill, which tragically, grotesquely, was passed by the fascist Republicans in the Senate and in the House of Representatives strips Medicaid from millions of people. It guts food assistance for the elderly, for children, for veterans. It punishes entire communities. Why? Because apparently obscenely wealthy people and corporations need more money, and they just don't want to pay their fair share of taxes. Not only that, they want to pay fewer taxes than they were already paying. This bill chooses retribution over representation. It defies the very ideals upon which this country was founded, which I grant you are theoretical. But I would also say that they were aspirational. Donald's mass deportation agenda, his unconstitutional raids on communities, his attacks on asylum seekers are a direct assault on one of the founding values of this country, welcoming immigrants. We are, or at least we were, a country of immigrants. America stood as a shining beacon to those desperate and in need of a place to call home where they could not only dream, but fulfill their dreams. Quote, he has made judges dependent on his will alone, unquote. Under Donald, the Department of Justice, so-called, and its lawyers have threatened judges, have undermined court rulings, have ignored judicial injunctions. One member, a deputy attorney general, instructed his staff to say, fuck you, to the federal bench. That would be Emil Bove, who has been nominated to an extraordinarily powerful lifetime seat on the Third Circuit Court of Appeals. How this is not a complete smack in the face of the rule of law is beyond my comprehension, and yet, here we are. Quote, he is kept among us in times of peace, standing armies without the consent of our legislatures, unquote. Just last month, Donald Trump sent the National Guard into California, federalizing the National Guard of a state that should have been in control of that state's governor, but it was done without that governor's consent and without congressional approval, which is exactly what our founders feared. Here's a part that I think is really flying under the radar, and it's extremely disturbing, and we need to talk about it more. The cuts enacted by that big abominable bill do not kick in right away. They don't start until 2026 after the midterm elections. Why? Because Republicans know just how repugnant and cruel this bill is. They know how much worse it is going to make people's lives, and they want to make sure nobody knows that until after the 2026 election so they can figure out a way to stay in power. They know. And yet, despite the fact that many of us know, too many people will not be aware, even though the Republicans are fully aware of their crimes against humanity, of their crimes against the people of this nation, and quite frankly, of their crimes against the people who continue to put them back in power. None of these is an isolated incident. This is all part of a coordinated plan. Project 2025 is the Trump regime's roadmap for authoritarian control, and it's nearly halfway to being completed. According to the Project 2025 tracker, the Trump regime is at 42% implementation of what is, quite frankly, a fascist manifesto. So I want to break down what this really means. In lockstep with Project 2025, the Trump regime has completed the following: 100% completion, Commodity Futures Trading Commission and USAID. Funding, gone. The DOJ, dismantling it, transforming it into a body that does not believe in civil rights and does not believe in upholding the rule of law, 61% completion. Gutting the EPA, 57% completed. The Department of Defense, 54%. The Department of Homeland Security, 44%. Here are some of the completed goals. The Trump regime, following the 2025 authoritarian roadmap, has eliminated the Office for Civil Rights and Civil Liberties at the Department of Homeland Security. It has dismantled the journalism firewall protecting Voice of America reporters and replaced it with One America News, which is a propaganda outlet that does nothing but disseminate disinformation. It has banned rainbow flags and Black Lives Matter flags from U.S. embassies. It has revoked non-discrimination protections for trans Americans and healthcare. It has authorized the Department of Justice to subpoena journalists, a policy Merrick Garland banned. And there's more planned here. The administration plans to cut contracts to so-called woke companies, universities, and governments that don't comply with Donald's agenda. It is in the process of continuing to criminalize DEI programs, even after a federal judge ruled that that violates civil rights law. It has banned fetal and stem cell research, even when it could lead to cures for diseases like Parkinson's, diabetes, and spinal injuries. It has defunded Planned Parenthood, threatening millions of Americans' access to basic care. None of this is about policy. This, as I said, is about retribution. It is about the vengeance of one petty, petty man who wants nothing more than to be the kind of tyrant our founders vowed to free us from. This is what the founders meant when they said, quote, "A long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism," unquote. This July 4th feels different from many that have come before. This is not simply about looking back on where we started, looking back on the fights to gain more of the freedoms that were promised us, even if indirectly, even if unwittingly by our founders. This is about looking square in the face of who this country has become, what we are now, who we are, and what we are going to need to do in order to become the country many of us hoped we would be, and many of us still believe we can be. Now, America was founded on 5 radical ideas: freedom of religion, not prioritizing evangelical groups, for USAID funding, for example, equal protection under the law, not erasing trans rights or targeting immigrants, consent of the governed, not executive orders defying Congress and the courts, free speech and a free press, not punishing journalists or turning public media into propaganda, checks and balances, not DOJ prosecutors doing the president's bidding, not Republicans in Congress ceding their constitutional authority and duty to the executive branch, thereby empowering it and putting it beyond the reach of the American people. Donald has betrayed every single one of these founding principles, and again, there are far too many other people to mention who have joined him in that effort. He is not preserving the Union. He does not believe in the Union. He does not believe in democracy. He does not care about America. He is a traitor who is trying to burn it all down to protect his fragile ego and acquire more power and more wealth simply so he can stop feeling so bad about himself. The Declaration of Independence ends with this warning, quote, "A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people," unquote. That's where we are, once again. The man in the White House has no respect for our laws, our rights, our future, or the people in this country, even the people who support him. It is up to us. There's nothing abstract about the fight in which we find ourselves. Right now, it is up to us to defend what still is vibrant about this democracy, to hold on to the hope that we can turn this around, but with the knowledge that if we are to, it is up to us. This is our moment. We cannot continue to sit around waiting for somebody else to stand up and lead. We are the leaders. We are the future. We must reclaim the meaning of July 4th. We must reclaim our patriotism. We must understand in ways we maybe never had to before what it means to be proud of this country, and we must do everything we can in order to make this a country of which we can be proud. So, I don't feel like celebrating today. What I'm going to do instead is think long and hard about how we got here to this very, very dark moment in our history, and what I can do to make sure that along with all of you, we achieve a much, much stronger, more fair, more representative, and more joyful democracy for all of us.
Please take a second and like and share this video. It'd be awesome if you could subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to us in podcast form, please follow us and give the show a 5-star rating, because it really does help other people find our content. Thanks.